Alright guys, this is your demonstration on how to get started with tonight's practice assignment, which will demonstrate contrast, balance, and emphasis. To start out, you're going to be creating what's called a motif. And a motif is simply just a simple square design that just has abstract shapes in it, and you'll be using that in our next class to create an overall pattern design. I want these to be as unique as possible, so I don't want you to start out with shapes that are common, such as hearts and flowers and stars and things like that. So to create those unique shapes that you're not going to find anywhere else, so that your final pattern ends up being something very unique that you won't find anywhere else, I want you to start out by using your signature. I want you to draw your name 3 different ways. You could use your first name, your last name, your initials, your middle name, whatever it is that you want to do. Okay? So start out, use a fairly thick marker. I don't want you to use a really thin one because I want you to use something that's going to create a fairly thick line when you put it down on the paper. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be super neat, because eventually when you create your motifs out of it, people are not even going to be able to tell what part of your name it was. They're not going to be able to tell what that letter was. They may not even be able to tell that it was part of your name originally. So you just want to do something that has some nice thick lines to it. You want to do it a few different ways just because that'll make your final design a little bit more interesting. So I'll do more of a cursive writing for my last name. That'll kind of give some interesting shapes that you wouldn't find when you're doing a print. Like I said, it doesn't have to be perfect. I want to thicken up my lines a little bit. And let me see, one more. I'll just kind of do my initials over here. And maybe I'll do them in a really funky font, something really angular. Why not? Alright. And even if they overlap each other, that's okay. Alright? So you've got those drawn out. The next thing that you're going to do is use your viewfinder. The viewfinder that I have is a little bit smaller than what you guys are going to have, but you're going to use that to find all these interesting, unique, positive, and negative shapes. And to do that, you're just going to lay the viewfinder flat on your piece of paper, and you're going to move it around all over where you've drawn your name. You're going to turn it at different angles. You know, don't just keep it parallel. Turn it at an angle like that. Turn it this way. Just move it around almost like you're playing with a Ouija board until you find a composition that you think is pretty interesting. I might stop right here and say, hey, I kind of like that balance. I like the fact that the line right here kind of cuts it in half so that it almost has symmetrical balance. But there's more black on this side than there is on that side. But hey, that might be interesting for balance. So let me go ahead and mark that off. Once again, you can use your marker, or you can use a pen or a pencil to just mark right inside of that viewfinder so that when you pull it away, you'll still be able to come back later and be able to tell that that's where your first motif was. But you got to find 3 of them. So keep moving with your viewfinder, moving around until you find some more interesting compositions that you like. There's not a perfectly right or wrong way to do this, because like I said, eventually you're going to be turning this into something different anyway. I might move over here. I kind of like the loop on that T in my last name, so I'll use that as my final motif. Actually, you need 4, so I've got 3, I need 1 more. Let's see. Might try to do something over here. Don't want to go too simple. If I just blocked that off, that might be too simple. I want something that's a little bit more original. So, that looks good. Who knows what it's going to turn out like when I actually put it together as a pattern. Alright, so I've got my 4 motifs marked off. The next thing I'm going to do is trace them onto a piece of paper and add color. Okay, we're ready for the second part of the demonstration. Now that you have found your 4 motifs, the next thing you're going to want to do is to trace them onto another piece of paper. I've got some tracing paper, which is what I'm using here. Obviously it's thinner, you can see through it a lot better. I should hopefully have enough for everybody in the class to have a sheet, but your marker may be dark enough that you can actually see it through a regular piece of paper. So try that first, and if that doesn't work, I've got the tracing paper for you. Alright, so you've got your tracing paper, and you're simply going to want to trace each one of those motifs. Now in this case, we're looking for positive and negative shapes, which is the same thing that you did in your last homework assignment, where you had to photograph the shapes of the letters in your name. So that's why I wanted you to make them really thick, because like right here at the top of that J, I don't want that to be seen as a line, I want it to be seen as a shape. So I'm just kind of outlining the shapes that are created by those nice, dark, thick, black lines that were created with my marker. And what's created then are my positive shapes, which are the black shapes here, and then my negative shapes, which is the white area around it. So you'll just go one by one, draw those in. If the shapes overlap each other and create one big shape, then that's fine. Obviously some of the shapes are going to kind of go outside of the box a little bit, and that's okay, because that's what abstracts them and makes them unique shapes that you've never seen before. You want to try to keep your boxes and the box that you make around it with your viewfinder as straight as possible, because of the fact that your pattern is going to come out a whole lot better if you have nice straight lines and nice perfectly square boxes. So you're going to do this to all four of the motifs that you have created and picked out. And when you're done, your tracing paper should look a little something like that, so that you have 4 different motifs. The last thing that you're going to do before you move on to the directions for showing contrast, balance, and emphasis is that you're going to cut out each one of these squares and you're going to glue them onto your worksheet. But that part I can explain in class.